Hello, welcome to episode number 18 of ChatGDG with yet again another amazing guest. We've got Tom. So Tom is not only a CTO at Apptaura, but is also a fellow GDG organizer and many other things, a public speaker, a lot's going on here. So Tom, welcome. How are you?
Hi, very well. Thank you. Very nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very nice to have you here. So, as I do, quite often, if you don't mind, would you like to introduce yourself to the crowd, to the people?
Absolutely. I'm Tom Colvin. As you say, I'm CTO of Apptaura. That's an app development specialist business. It's a business that I set up with a friend 10 years ago. 10 years ago.
A decade.
Um, a decade ago. Yeah. So it's a decade in about 10 weeks time. So almost there. Hopefully we'll make it. Yeah, in Android sense, that's it's as old as KitKat or iOS 8, if that's your if
Oh
that's your
wow,
ballpark.
Kit Kat! Oh my God, they really ring a bell. Sparkle some memories back in the days. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, back in the bad old days. Before that, I've had a couple of startups. Learned interesting lessons from them. They weren't financially successful,
Mm,
but you get so much. You get so much out
right.
of just sort of going through the loop and doing it a couple of times. You learn incredible amounts. So had a couple of startups before then. And prior to that, and straight out of uni, in fact, before uni, I worked in development. What my mother would call my only proper job that I've ever had. Actually working for somebody else, yeah. Enjoyed that for a while. Did that for about 10 years, and yeah. Prior to that was at uni, but at the same time working a tech job that I'd had essentially since I was about 16, 17,
That's
something
interesting.
as early as that. Yeah. So for me, uni wasn't that interesting. I just wanted to get back to work, to be honest.
Okay.
But yeah, outside of work, I mean, I'm an Android enthusiast. That's my absolute passion. I work with security as well. I'm an ethical hacker. I enjoy that very much indeed. As you mentioned, on the GDG side of things, I'm a community leader at Hanson Surrey, GDG Hanson Surrey, um, and yeah, that's a fun thing to do.
Wow, it is indeed. There is a lot to talk about here. We can really, deep dive in so many things. But I really would like to start with, yeah, perhaps your startup, kind of adventure, if that makes sense, because I really like uh, how you say that, right? So how much have you learned? So it's clear that those startup weren't quote unquote successful. If we think about the usual way in which we think about success. On the other end, I think that they were successful because you've learned so much from that experience, right? So how do you measure success? For example, that can be an interesting question.
Well, absolutely. So my first startup was 2005. I was 21, very young. I was working with a friend of mine from school, a great guy who's gone on to be engineering manager at an app development company as well, just essentially like me. But he and I built a knowledge base. It was essentially Yahoo Answers, if you remember that,
Yeah.
before that ever existed. And it was, I thought it was a good idea. But honestly, it doesn't matter if it was a good idea or not because we never actually got it to the market.
Okay.
And yeah, there are lots of reasons why that didn't make it to the market, but the big one was just not being able to do an MVP, just not being able to
Gotcha.
stop development and say, right, this is good enough. This is
I
good
see.
enough to get and put in front of people and just see what their response is.
Yeah.
We absolutely were perfectionists. still it's something I carry. It's something I try not to be, but it's something I'm always fighting against. But we were absolute perfectionists. No, that has to be perfect. This bit has to be in place. And hang on, what about if a person goes down this and presses this and presses this, then they're going to get a bit confused. So, okay, we need to build a whole system for dealing with that kind of thing. And you know how these things just spiral and spiral and spiral. And you turn what is a small startup idea into something absolutely gigantic. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So the first lesson from that startup, again, I was very, very young, but the first lesson from that startup was about how to manage a product, how to take a product to market. What is it that you actually have to do before you can get to a point where something is good enough just to get responses from people, just to see. These were the days before I'd read or understand the Lean Startup book. I'm sure you've heard of that one. And the ideas of agile methodology and that sort of thing.
What you said so far is a little bit more on the waterfall side of things. Just do the old thing like until it's perfect, which is
but it's fascinating because even now working at Apptaura with the people that come to our door, sometimes we work with enormous big businesses, sometimes we work with medium businesses, but a lot of what we do is with startups. And so many startups come to us with a list of things. I want to do this and this and this and this. And it, to them, we haven't got a product until we've got all of these things. And the amount of money they have to invest in order to get that, I was investing my time back in 2005, but they're investing money. They're putting their house on the line a lot of the time because this is pre-seed almost. This is just getting something out there to take to investors. So it's fascinating how many people still think like that and how difficult it is to change that waterfall mindset.
Because I think the idea that these people have is like, if I get it out and if it's not successful, I've lost my, occasion. Whilst it's a little bit different than that, because it can be not great successful, but you need to learn those lessons and adjust a little bit the aim. That is the attitude.
Yes, absolutely. So that was it was fascinating. It was a really good learning curve for me. And again, the best way of learning is to fail, and that's a good failure. So it's I'm still on good terms with the people that I was working with at that time, so that's good as well.
Nice.
Didn't lose my relationship with my partner either, which would be so easy to do.
Yeah. So everything ended up like working out quite well. So you've taken all those lessons and you've put all of them in this Apptaura when you.
Yeah, so prior to that, 2011, I think I worked another startup with my family this time. It was a nice experience, and we got quite a long way with that one. It was a security company. So it's a company I still have actually for my own freelance work called Conceal Security.
I got to ask, sorry, how it is to work with family, because that can be amazing or can even be a little bit, I don't know. So what was your experience? I'm genuinely curious.
Great. We're a close family, and it was my dad that I was working with. So the lesson learned from Conceal is get the right people with you. He is not at all tech, and I am not at all business. This is why I say to people that I'm a bad entrepreneur, because I don't actually care about the business side of things. It's taken me a while to recognize that.
Okay,
I don't actually care about the business side of things. I care about the tech side of things. I'm really good as like a number 2 in the
Mm-hmm.
organization, but not a number 1. I'm not business, I'm not financial. Those are the things that I see myself as having to go through in order to get to the point where I can start doing the tech. And
Mm.
it sort of slowly clicked in my head that wasn't, that kind of work isn't right for me. So working with family, working with my father, who really is that, he comes from a line of entrepreneurs, his dad before him and his dad before, and successful businessmen, always the males in the family, because that's how it was back in the days. They were all successful in their own ways, and it's therefore fascinating to work with somebody who just understands this stuff, who just knows how to work with people, who knows the financials of things, who knows the legal side of things, weird things that
Yeah.
if you don't know about this stuff, there's no way that you would ever
There is
know
no,
other than,
yes, exactly. The little thing that I've learned is about legal, but also about business and finance and how things works. Is a very bad mistake to assume or to apply common sense to these things, because these things, they literally, the rules of that game are different rules. So you got to understand the rules first. If you try to apply common sense, chances are you're gonna get disappointed.
yes, exactly, yeah, so true. So we the lesson was find the right people who know these
Mm.
things, and I've always said common sense doesn't really exist, and that might be because I don't have any of it. I don't know. It might be because it really doesn't exist. But something that is common sense to somebody will be like 3 steps away in somebody else's head, because they
Mm.
just haven't got to the point where they're thinking the same as you. What you think is common sense doesn't necessarily follow for them.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And quickly about the finding the right people, I think that is so true that often people find the idea first and then they find the team to execute that. I think that you should find the people first, because then finding an idea, you will figure out something. It's so important to have the right team. So if you need to, decide whether idea first or team first, people, just go with people. Just is, I mean, it's not even close. You know what I mean? Because it's so important, and you can inspire, each other, and things just go well.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's a good lesson to learn. So it's sort of a lesson that I brought to the next
Mm.
startup, which is Apptaura, and that's worked. That's great. So 10 years that's been going, and it was started out by myself and a friend. We are both developers. We're both on the tech side, but he has a very different background to me, and his very different.
Mm.
This is Jules Ham. I started it with, and his background is school then military, which is very very different to me. I
Gotcha.
can't picture me in the military at all. But he's school and military, and the way he thinks about things is the military precision behind his thinking, the organizational type
Discipline.
things. Yes, the discipline is very very useful. It's a very useful skill set for starting a business. And then very soon on, we brought on Tom Gibbons, who remains the CEO of
Okay.
Apptaura. So that's he was essentially, we brought him in as a salesperson. He's a good salesperson, but saw his potential to actually lead and run the business. And, he's been doing that since I guess 2015, 16. So
Wow.
he
Long
came
time
early
ago.
on. Yes, indeed.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've got a good team. Jules has upped and left run off to Cornwall, where it's a nice relaxing place to live, and left us to it. But that's great. That's fine. The company continues well.
Nice one. So for sure, Apptaura, we know for sure that has a really good team, and you iterate fast, right? So those are the two things that for sure we know there are happening at Apptaura. Okay.
We are as lean
Right.
as possible. Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. Yeah. So
Interesting.
we carried that on into how we built the team under the management as well. How we hired people, how we went about it. So very early on, there was no money. There was no money whatsoever. But we still needed the people. We still needed as many people as we could. And that very first hire, who was an apprentice, was such a huge step for us. We had no money to bring in a fully qualified developer, let alone junior, senior, whatever. So we brought in an apprentice, thinking that if we mentor this apprentice, if we show them how things should be done, and take them through the process, it'll take longer to get to a point where they can actually deliver something, deliver their first piece of code. But we will have been able to do that at lesser expense than bringing on a new person. So that's what we did. That was our approach, and it worked very well. So Liam has been with us since 2016-17, and he's now the most senior iOS dev in the company.
Nice.
So we did it again. We iterated. We brought in another apprentice, this time on the Android side. We've got more apprentices coming. So my role ended up being one of mentor. And the company, even though it could now afford new developers, still works that way. Still works on bringing in people who know not nothing, but are approaching their first tech job and
very early stages.
exactly that. And it's an approach that's worked for us very, very well indeed. Continues, like I say, at the beginning it was necessity, but now it's the way that we like to do things. It's
interesting, right? So from a necessity, came. I mean, let's imagine. Let's get back to that time, and let's imagine for some reason that you immediately found like £2 million as funding. Back then, you would say, okay, that's nice. Let's hire a senior engineer, principal engineer, and you would have missed this trick, right?
Yes.
That I found this very interesting, that out of something that was needed at the time, you found, excuse me, you found a pretty good, recipe about how, because that is a win-win for, everyone, right? Because at the beginning, of course, an apprentice costs much less than a senior, but you get this mentorship thing going on, which just a quick reminder to people, mentorship is always both ways. It's never one way. If you mentor someone, you also learn at the same time. So that's why it's so valuable, right? And then that person growth, you can model that person as because that's is another challenge. For example, if you bring in a very senior person, clearly that person bring a lot of value, but a lot of opinions, if that makes sense, right? So sometimes it's difficult to adjust. Whilst on the other hand, if you've got someone more on the early stages, you can kind of like shape a little bit, no, the way in which this person is gonna progress. And you would, if you do a good job, as you said, and we've got proof, people will stay. Why they shouldn't stay? They are happy. They feel rewarded. They feel taken care of. Happy days, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it matters to us that we keep employees for exactly that reason. We invest a lot of money. We invest a lot of time more than money.
Exactly.
In building somebody up, and if somebody left even within the first 3 years, that actually becomes difficult for us. So our approach, it's surely a universal approach, but our approach has always been to try and make work as good and as interesting as possible for our employees. It seems obvious, but certain things like I don't like it when employees work beyond their hours. There's no unpaid overtime. There's no overtime at Apptaura. If we build it around people having families, we build it around the concept that people should enjoy work, but we understand that work is what they do to gain money. That's the part of their life that they can continue with because they continue with out of necessity. But if we can make it that they can continue with it out of enjoyment as well as necessity, then it works well. We give unlimited holiday. We try to make it as nice and as cozy as possible. These are the things that I early on thought that the tech industry was sometimes lacking. Sometimes, particularly in big organizations where there's huge, great rooms with windows miles away, and therefore, it's always daylight. You don't know what's going on outside. You're very detached from the world around you. So I was trying to build a business that felt different to that, and I think we've largely succeeded.
Nice.
Generally we keep our employees. Certainly, the next apprentice hire was Gareth Sanashi, who is now our lead Android dev, and it's allowed me personally to go up and up, and now I only work 2 days a week there. I've got a team that I'm happy enough can take over large parts of the role that I was doing, so I can step aside. That's all
the testament that you're doing a good job is exactly this. If you are able to make yourself redundant, you've done a fantastic job, right? Because you automatically empowered all the people. You clearly trust them. They clearly are doing a very good job. Again, happy days, right? But all these concepts are quote unquote obvious, but then when you actually try to execute some of them, perhaps they start to become slightly less obvious, because of course it depends on what team do you have, how big is the team. To do a really good job with 10 people, it's doable. 50, 100, 500 people, that is complicated. So when you scale really a lot there, and that's why clearly in big companies sometimes you can find maybe some situations that there are ideal, let's put it that way, right? Because it's genuinely difficult, right? So people also need to understand that some of these stuff are genuinely complicated to implement, to execute.
Absolutely. And on the we're a small business. We're not a large business at all. We're a small business, but that gives us our own challenges as well. And it means, for example, that developers have to wear more hats than they would otherwise. So it's not necessarily useful to us to have somebody who is only good at Android development. That's helpful, but in a packaged off area that becomes helpful a small portion of a working week. Somebody who knows Android development and can build a web app in React or in Angular or something like that, that's more helpful. But a developer who can develop stuff and talk to a customer about what they've developed and work with a customer and understand what lies between the lines when a customer writes an email, that is massively important.
And that's
That's
also
what makes a great
a
person.
combination of a few roles, right? If you go
Yes.
to again to the big corporate, that is a product manager, that is an engineer, that is a salesperson, that is might be
Yeah.
a devrel slash customer and engineer. There are quite
Absolutely.
a few things. So yeah, I totally get it. The value that you can get from these people is very, very high. How do you hire then? So what do you when you screen, some CV? I think that you are looking at different kind of things in a candidate.
Yeah. It's I it's difficult. It's difficult because I'm looking for, first and foremost, I'm looking for somebody who can learn. I don't necessarily care about what their skills are currently.
Hmm.
I'm going to ask questions like, if you've been working in, I don't know, Fortran, to pick a fairly dead language. I'm going to get lots of hate mail for saying that that's dead, because I bet it actually isn't. But if they've been working in Fortran for the last 20 years, then I'm going to ask questions about why they stuck. But more importantly, I'm interested in finding people that don't necessarily know how to develop. Again, I always come back to Android because it's my favorite subject, but who don't necessarily know how to build an Android app, but can show that they have learned things along their journey, and that I think that they could take that learning to the next level to help with the specific areas that we need. The other thing that I look for is signs that people can communicate, because I'm sure that is entirely universal, but somebody who is able to communicate on paper is good, but somebody who you can pick up the phone to and can communicate, complex technical things to someone who doesn't understand about the technology is very important.
That's a gigantic skill.
It is a gigantic skill, and enormously important for an agency, because obviously we're an agency, because the people that come to our door want an app and generally don't know how to build one, what makes a good app.
Exactly. Don't know it. Don't even care. Like, okay, build me that. I don't care
Yes,
how. Just get it done.
yes, that's right. So that's some of the most difficult customers that we get, because they, in general, somebody who takes a step back is less willing to work with us on where you hit roadblocks, and you will always hit a roadblock.
Of course.
There is absolutely
No
no
way.
project that just
Yes.
goes through all the way, and there's no,
Impossible.
yeah. So you often have to go back to a client and say, right, we just need to tweak something here. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk about your thoughts on this. Let's see where your mind is, so that we're not just making decisions for you. But the customers who work with us and understand that are the easiest in general to be with.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So I'm curious. Android. We say this word like quite a few times. It's pretty clear that you just bring passion about Android. Like, why? What happened? What Android has that really intrigues you? And by the way, I'm a big fan. This is the Pixel 8, so I'm a big Android
Ooh,
fan. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
nice and shiny.
Yeah. But I'm really curious, right? Because it's not about the actual mobile and the actual phone and that's it. You are an Android dev. You are a very experienced Android dev. So you really want to go, as vertical as possible there. Like, why? I'm genuinely curious.
Well, I like the operating system. I like the community behind Android.
Mm.
I think that's got a good feel. I like the openness of Android, and that matters
Okay.
a lot to me. I think, for example, the way that I can build an app and send it to you. That's actually, it seems like such a ridiculously simple thing, but other operating systems, you can't do that. You have to go through a third party.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that matters. The concept of freedom, not as in price, but freedom as in freedom of expression, freedom of ideas. That sort of free as in freedom.
Interesting. Yep.
Matters a lot to me. I've been an Android user since 1.6. Android 1.6 was my first Android phone in 2009, I think. That's Android Donut. And it was an operating system back then which was terrible.
The first Android were
awful.
absolute, really not great phones. My first one was the HTC Desire.
Me too. Yeah,
with the lid. There was a piece of garbage. That was so bad because if you remember, for some reason you had very little space in terms of app, storage. I don't know why they did that, but it was so bad that at some point you needed to uninstall an app if you want to install a new one. It was something like 255, 56 megabytes, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, it was painful. But then we got better with the Nexus and with the Galaxy and with the all of
That's
that.
Right, yeah. Obviously, Samsung pushes a lot of it. And Samsung, is as far as you're allowed to stray from Android while still being able to call it Android. There's a big set of rules, and that's all an interesting topic, but probably not for now. But about what allows you to call a phone an Android phone, because it's not just that it runs Android. To call it an Android phone, you have to have certain compatibility. The amount of changes since that one is really significant, and it's changes in the security of it really made a big difference. Changes in the UI made a big difference as well. So Android Lollipop obviously was a really huge change in the way that things appear and that you interact with your phone. So that was back in 2016, I would say.
Something like that, yeah.
I like the way that Android. I like the way that it's open source. Again, free, as in freedom, and the way that the Android team really do listen to you. There are people working on Android, and if you submit a bug report, they listen. They do work, and you can when the code drop comes at the time that Android is released to the public, you get to see the source code behind it, and you can see that they've genuinely paid attention. So the community side of Android really works for me as well.
Shout out, because we have a friend of ours who works at Google as senior engineer in the Android team, Alessio Balsini. Shout out to him, because for sure he contributed to some of the parts of this amazing operating system. Quick question: if you had to buy an Android phone now, what would you buy? The new Pixel? Would you buy the new Samsung? Would you buy something else?
I'd buy what you've held up. In fact, I have. Yes. It's a great handset. I like the camera on it. I like the way that it's stock Android and not too different from where.
Because something that I noticed, because I'm also a big fan of the Android. I always and only had Android phones. I never had an iPhone. I mean, maybe at some point I will, just for the sake of it. But for now, I've been through quite a few Android phones, and back in the days, Android was really very No, I'm not saying lackluster, but it took its time to get there. So now we reach a point where the stock, Android is amazing, right? So there is maybe not needs to add on top all the stuff that Samsung were adding like 10 years ago, or even the HTC. There were all those vendors that they were, as you said, starting from the Android, the stock Android, and adding things on top and customizations and whatnot. Back then was quite useful. I mean, to be honest, to in a way close the gap with the iPhone. But now I think that we can absolutely, get away without anything on top of an operating system which works pretty well now. I'm pretty
Yeah.
happy personally.
Yeah, there's a movement towards stock Android, and there was particularly a few years ago now a movement against Samsung, who were bundling so many different apps with their phone, because obviously it worked for them to do that. There was a sponsorship in place to make that happen, and it's good that the industry has moved on since then.
Yeah, I mean, agree, 1000%. I think we should, hopefully stick with the Pixel. So Pixel 8 or Pixel 8 Pro? That's another.
Yeah, I like. Have you seen the zoom on the Pro? It's incredible.
Yeah, the Zoom Pro is yeah. I have the 8, the non Pro 8, because I'm kind of like I value the footprint much more. I just cannot stand big phones. It's just something. So this was is pretty. The footprint is decent compared with
Yeah, it is.
what's out there. So that was pretty much my selling points. And then I'm not this great, photographer. So the camera on the 8 is absolutely fine for my needs. So that was pretty much my thought. But yes, I saw the zoom in one of my friends. It's like, oh wow, I
Yeah,
did not
yeah.
expect
It's
that,
like,
right? Yeah.
yeah. It's like right at the other end of the field, you can like pick up road signs, and it's fantastic. And
Yeah,
it's done not just because the lens is good, but because the software is good
the
behind
software is
it.
incredible. The software is incredible. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the best take and magic eraser, magic this, magic that. Wow,
it really was magic.
wow.
I remember using that the first time and thinking, wow, it really just worked.
Yeah,
You don't,
it's
very, very rarely do things like that genuinely, things that are
yeah,
called magic, actually live up to the promise. But that one really did. It made me go, good.
yeah, and that's this. There is this also this other big problem because it's amazing from one side, but then back the question like, okay, where are we going? So because you can take a picture and you can modify that picture in a way that is not even the same picture, if that makes sense. So it's
Yeah.
like, what are we even doing? Are we capturing moments or are we creating moments? Right? Because it's an interesting
Yeah.
point.
Yes. So my partner has a Pixel phone with its good camera, with its smart stuff, but she enjoys Polaroid photography for exactly that reason. She says Polaroids are
Yeah,
the only thing that actually captures what you are looking at
exactly.
in the
Exactly. Yeah,
old-fashioned way.
that's interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. 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 Cool. I want to quickly talk about the community side of things because as a fellow GDG organizer, since how long have you been a GDG organizer?
Probably about 5 years, something like
Mm.
that. So certainly within Hanson Surrey,
Hmm.
and speaking at other events, Reading, for example, GDG Reading. Shout out to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
not far away from where I live either. So I've been to events there. I've been involved in the community a little bit there.
Yeah. That's pretty cool because Reading is also not that far from Milton Keynes, is it? So there was like a little bit of a
Yeah,
partnership going
yeah.
on.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's sort of post-pandemic.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm the exact same problem we have with our community as I think every GDG, probably everywhere in the world, had, which is during the pandemic we found it very hard to do anything, and to be brutally honest, we just ended up doing nothing. So we are at the stage where we are building up a community again. And we're working with some great people. I'm lucky to live in Basingstoke, which is a town, like a large town, but one that's quite tech.
Oh,
It's got a lot of good tech companies and a lot of startups. It's got a council that is particularly good at helping companies start up in the area as well. There are lots of programs and bursaries and things like that available. Yeah, so Basingstoke seems a good place for a GDG. We're not quite back at the levels that we were pre-pandemic, but it's a
It's
growing community.
Yeah, it's all very difficult. I totally feel what you say. Clearly, there was a big problem for all the GDGs, and yeah, there have been a couple of very interesting years. Under this point of view, it was difficult to do anything. The online things, yeah, sure, but if only doing online, events is really not where I want to be. I want to have the in-person kind of element because it's so important. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's complicated to get back to the pre-pandemic. To the pre-pandemic things is very complicated. I'm not
yeah,
sure whether we can ever reach that point. It will probably be very close, but I think that COVID really changed things. I think that I
yeah.
don't know.
People
Yeah,
stay at
the
home more.
right. Yes,
Yeah,
really. The is also is a point of view of habit, like getting the habit of staying home because maybe some person generally stayed at home for almost 2 years, and then yeah, why should I bother to get out? That kind of mindset. So I don't know. Yeah, it is complicated. It's much more difficult. I remember I started, I think in 2019. You must have started maybe a year prior. Yeah, and that was in 2019 as GDG Cloud London. We did something like 60 events, 60, 65. It was incredible.
wow.
There were some weeks which we had two, one on a
Yeah,
Tuesday, one on a Thursday. It was like, oh wow, but it was cool. And then COVID happened, and then was a little bit sad, right? Because of course you are gonna lose people that
yeah,
you spend a lot of time to create that community, right? To create that engagement, people can trust you, you deliver value, and then months after months after months, of course people takes different paths in life. People just leave London, right? For example, how many
yeah.
people left London or England in general during the pandemic, plus Brexit, which is a
Yes.
deadly combination if you ask me.
Yeah, horrible. Yeah.
So yes, but we are getting back. We are slowly,
Yeah.
yes, getting back. I think we are on the right track as
Yeah.
GDG movement.
Yes. Yeah. And every time I go to a Google
Mhm.
affiliated event or a Google event arranged by Google itself, the community is fantastic. There's
Yes,
so many nice, interesting, decent people there, and you know, working with the same people day in and day out. They're great people I work with, but it ends up sort of boxing you up, and the
mm,
community is then what opens out your horizons and makes you look further. And I think, and the reason I think that the online pandemic events didn't work as well is because the part of the community events that I like the most, that I find the most valuable, is when you're just milling around and just chatting to people. The
absolutely.
things that happen
Yeah.
outside of the main event. The main
Yeah.
event is usually interesting and good, and you sit down and you learn something. But the links, the networking that happens outside of that is where it becomes very, very valuable.
I do agree, and I urge to people and to the organizers in terms of everything, leave a little bit of gap. You shouldn't, because people are
Yeah,
getting a little bit paranoid. We need to stuff talk after talk, just 2 minutes break between. No, give people time. It's fine, even if you've got 30, 40 minutes of nothing. Is great because people can catch a breath and then also
yeah,
mingle and networking. This is
yeah,
all that I do. I'm gonna be honest. When I attend conferences and whatnot, yeah, I might attend one or two talks, sure, but definitely more than 50% of my time at any given conference is just wandering, around, talking to people, meeting new people, meeting
mhm,
all faces, because that's another beauty when you are into this big community. the Google community in general, yes, guess what? You will find some of the people over and over again, because there is like DroidCon and there is like other big things. And it's very interesting because if you attend these events, you will meet new people and you would find old friends, which is, I think, is a really
Yes.
good balance. That's spot
Yes.
on, right? It's not as dispersive as you don't know anyone ever. It's not as small as you know all the people all the time. Is that kind of
Yeah.
balance between the two
Yeah.
that I personally
Yes.
find it very valuable.
Yes. Yes. No, I totally agree. I totally agree. It's a good segue into DevFest. You should talk about DevFest, and I can
Oh, let's
mention what I'm
see.
talking about at DevFest as well.
Let's see what is happening on the 18th of November. It's like actually in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, folks.
2 weeks.
DevFest
That came
London.
up quick.
Yeah, time flies. Time genuinely flies. Can we stop time for a second, please?
I know.
Yeah, DevFest London. So it's gonna be a really good fun, folks. It's gonna be organized by GDG London and GDG Club London. So it's a joint effort. We have all our WhatsApp groups, 10 people, 12 people, and we try to make things happen, which is a really good fun. So it's gonna be hosted at King's College London. I think it's like a premium, location. So it's going to be great. All day is going to happen on a Saturday for a very good reason. 9 a.m., 5 p.m. So you don't have to take a day off, which is great. You just need to wake up perhaps slightly earlier than you do on a Saturday to attend. But I can guarantee it's going to be worth it. We're going to have 24 talks. 24.
Wow.
Divided among 3 tracks. You've got a web and mobile track, an AI and cloud, and a community track, as well as workshops. We're going to have also 4 workshops on top of the 24 talks that I mentioned. So there is content for everyone. Generally, everyone, whatever your interest lies, there is something for you there. We're going to do a bunch of raffles. It's going to be really good fun. We're going to giving away very interesting swags, Google Minis, Google Bags, very good stuff. So it's a good fun. It's a very, very good fun. And are you giving a talk, Tom, by any chance?
Maybe. Thank you for
Okay.
asking. So I've put together a workshop on
Nice.
Android, obviously, because Android's
Fantastic.
brilliant. Android and Bluetooth, and we're going to have some fun with communicating with other devices.
Ooh.
We're going to learn about Bluetooth, which is a difficult standard to understand, but
Interesting.
is well supported within Android. And we're going to make it a little bit competitive. So we've got a device where if you are the first to connect and put your name on the screen, then there will be a prize.
That is what we like to hear. Okay, it's not only a great, topic, but also this gamification aspect. I really like it. I think people would love to, compete. Because when there is a healthy competition, I think it's absolutely great. So,
yes, indeed,
right?
Indeed. So there's a little bit of theory to blast through, but once we blasted through that, it's essentially open access, and there isn't an expectation that you have to know about Android or Kotlin. That's something that we can work through together. But those people who do know about it can go off on their own and win the prize,
Nice.
and we can otherwise work with I can work with the people who don't know that more intensively, and that will so there's a side to the workshop which is serious actual dev work. Let's see what it's like to write an Android app if you've never done that before. Let's see what the Kotlin language looks like if you've never looked at it before. And at the end of it, you will actually produce something. You'll produce something interesting.
That I think is absolutely great. So how long does it last, your workshop in total?
It's an hour and a half workshop.
Nice, because you need to have that time to do the what's the word, the theory, and then immediately boom, the hands-on part, which is of course the most valuable. And I'm pretty sure that some of the more senior people that would join this will be more than happy to helping you in perhaps helping and mentoring the more junior people there. So you know what I mean. You when you create this mechanism, this culture, because this is culture, pretty much, then you're gonna have like a very happy room.
Yes.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Are you excited?
Very excited. Very excited.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be good fun. It's going to be good to see the sort of people that turn up to the workshop. And like I say, it doesn't matter your skill level. We can work with you. And it's fun to see the people who
Exactly.
really know their stuff
Mm-hmm.
and really can just blast through all of everything and get it done. And then work on other things, because there's extra things that you can
Extra
do afterwards.
steps. Extra
Extra
steps.
steps, yeah.
Okay.
Always
Stretch
more.
goals. Stretch
Always stretch
goals.
goals.
Right.
That's the
Nice.
ones. Versus the people who haven't touched an Android app before.
What you said is actually really valuable, because pretty much every of these Google community events, can be talks, can be workshops, can be everything, always open to everyone. People sometimes ask me,
Yes.
I'm not sure if I can, come over. It's a Google thingy. And that's
Yeah.
that's the reason why you should come. That is exactly the opposite. Is always open to everyone. Don't feel that you are not good enough. Don't feel that those are just people, just lovely people that want to help. So yeah, don't be shy and don't be afraid. Just join every event, because the community, as we said, we can be held accountable of saying that the Google community is amazing. You may or may not like the product side of things. That's up to you. That's absolutely fine. But the community side of things is spot on. Is absolutely
Yeah.
the best that I came across personally.
Yes, I completely agree, and by a long way as well. I think
By a long shot, yeah. It's not even close. That's
yeah,
exactly. It's not by a small
yeah,
margin. It's amazing. Amsterdam.
yeah.
Amsterdam.
Yes,
Oh my
it's
God, that thing
quite an
was.
event.
I think I must have mentioned that in almost all my 18 episodes of this podcast, because it was so good. It was so good.
It was
It was
how a party should
incredible.
be. Yeah.
It was incredible. I mean, bring me back.
Any company that builds a beach just for fun,
Yeah, come on.
it's a fun one to be with. Yeah.
Come on. The boat trips, the
Yeah.
vibe was electrical, was an electrical vibe. All the people were having an amazing time.
Yeah.
So it's contagious when you are
Yes.
in these positive environments. And that's why it's important to be there, because you not just learn something attending talks, meeting people, get inspired by people, which is very important, right? So you get so much from this, if you go lucky enough to attend these summits. That's pretty good. It was
Yeah.
amazing. What was your experience in Amsterdam?
I mean, the same. Everything that you said just rings true for me as well. I really enjoyed meeting the faces that I'd seen
Mm.
in all of the Google documentation. Again, Android always my go-to example, but there are certain people within the Android team, the DevRel teams, who are
Mm.
actually pretty famous within their own tiny little area. And it was great to meet those people. It was great to meet people whose names I've seen on a regular basis, but never had the opportunity to speak to before. Yeah, they're all nice people. The talks were interesting. It was interesting how they did the talks on a rolling basis.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, you walk in, you sit down, listen to a talk, and then the next one starts pretty much straight away. And you can either, so it's kind of
Mm.
a come in and go out as you
Okay, gotcha.
please.
Okay, sure. Interesting.
Um, yeah. Otherwise, in terms of just a party. That was great. Yeah, the food was amazing. The activities were amazing.
Incredible. It was incredible.
The ability to bike rides, boat rides,
Boat rides, bike rides.
beaches. We've
The
talked about.
weather was perfect.
Yes, the weather was perfect.
The weather was perfect. It was,
Yeah.
it was so perfect that you said, "Is this a AI thing, the magic weather
Yes.
app tool, or I don't know." That was
I wouldn't put
incredible.
it past them. Wouldn't put it past them.
No, probably not. So yeah, I mean, join if you can, folks. Join Google, events. It's a really good fun. You can meet people and take it from there. Lastly, we've got about 5 minutes left. I really wanted to touch upon these other little experience that we are doing, just not us, among with other people. GDG Academy. Okay, let's put the right logo.
Hey,
GDG Academy logo.
perfect.
Hey. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that, about the project? I don't know if you have had already your call with your mentees, and how did it go?
I have. I mean, they're so impressive. Students these days are so impressive. Certainly, frankly, a lot more switched on than I was back at university in terms of the what they want to do in their lives. Well, I am doing this course because next step is this and next step is this, and that's
Gotcha.
enormously impressive to me. But so my just to be clear, what my involvement in the academy. So it's obviously a mentorship program. We've mentioned that before. My involvement is as a mentor. I'm a mentor to 3 students, 2 Imperial, 2 and 1 King's College. Not necessarily all computer science students, some electrical engineering, some engineering specifically. But yeah, it's fascinating, and I what impresses me about the questions that I'm getting as a mentor is that they are very specific about what they can do with the work that they do at university. So you might be learning, say, C++ at university, but is that useful in the real world? What skills does that give you? What skills should you learn alongside that the university might not be teaching you? And those questions are really, really interesting to me, because obviously it feeds into my daily role at Apptaura, where I am teaching people exactly that. I have never, and this is so interesting, I've never had a developer straight out of university or straight out of college or wherever they come from know how to use things like Git. They use Git because they know GitHub and they can press the button to download a zip or clone, but not really understand how to manage the
nuances, branches and whatnot.
Exactly. So just little tiny things like that. But you mentioned earlier, and it's so true, that the mentorship is a two-way thing. It's I learn a lot from the students that I talk to. I've had 3 1-hour calls now with 3 mentees, and the stuff that they are learning, we have really interesting conversations. One is involved in building a startup of his own, has interesting ideas, has shown in the startup it's a really, really good idea, and is there's a good back and forth there on how to bring that to market. He's not fallen in the waterfall trap, which is what I thought.
Okay,
I was about 21
great.
years old.
Okay, that's fantastic. But that was exactly the reason why I wanted to do this initiative, because I don't see any value in I'm gonna help you to get better at Java. That's not the point. You're gonna do that on your own time. Let me teach you. Let me, clue you in a little bit about how it works.
Yeah.
Git, team structure, agile. What's agile? You know what I mean? Those
Yeah.
that for
Yeah.
us, of course, we've been doing this job for a few years. Let's put it that way. I
Yeah.
started in 2005. So long
Right,
long
okay.
time ago. So yeah, so those things for us are the norm, because of course we are used to that. But I appreciate that those are the things that they really want to know. What's a pipeline, for example? I was talking with one of these students, not during my one-to-one mentees, but when there were like a bunch, and then I was talking up because the pipeline and this and that, and then someone raised their hands. What is a pipeline? It's like, okay, damn it. And that was on
Yeah.
me, because I should not have assumed
It's
that
so difficult to rewind, isn't it? In your head.
yeah, it's okay. So I need to explain, what's the
Yeah.
purpose of a pipeline, what problem try to solve, and what not. So yes, I was very happy to explain that to that person. But
Yeah.
of course that person was really right in terms of raise their hand. If you've got a doubt, raise your hand, please, folks, because otherwise you
Yes.
will never know. Guess what? If you don't raise your
Yeah.
hand, you will never know. So
And it's such
just
a
raise your
privilege for us. It's such a
hand.
privilege to be able to be the first person to explain that to you. Answering questions is kind of what I live for. It's just
All right.
it's a really it's life affirming, hopefully for both of us. But
Yeah, exactly.
the privilege of being the first person to understand to explain to you what a pipeline is, or about clean architecture, or about the solid principles, or
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's a fantastic thing to
agree.
be able to
Yeah.
do with my life.
I'm liking it very, very much. All right, Tom, we are out of time. That was a
Yeah,
fantastic episode. Really went really smooth. I really enjoyed that. So we
enjoyed it.
definitely, I would like to have you back at some point for a part two, because I think there is still a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
But yeah, for the time being, thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
And I'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks at DevFest.
Yes, and hopefully every member of the audience as well.
Yeah. See you there, folks. Bye.